Egypt built structures so mathematically precise 5,000 years ago that modern engineers still cannot fully explain the methods used to construct them. And today, Egypt has over 110 million people living almost entirely along a single river, because just a few kilometers outside it there is nothing but uninhabitable desert. This is the real Egypt, ancient and modern, colliding every single day. Egypt's independence story, Egypt's ongoing political transformation, and Egypt's daily reality for everyday people get almost zero attention compared to the pyramids. By the end of this video, you'll understand Egypt in a way that goes far beyond anything you learned in a history class. Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 2560 BC and remained the tallest man-made structure on Earth for almost 4,000 years, a record unbroken until the construction of Lincoln Cathedral in England in the 14th century. Egypt's ancient builders constructed this pyramid using approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, with a level of precision that modern engineers still study and debate. The base of Egypt's Great Pyramid is level to within just a couple centimeters across its entire 13-acre footprint, an accuracy that's difficult to achieve even with modern laser equipment. Egypt's ancient Egyptians achieved this without any tools we would recognize as advanced, which is exactly why so many alternative theories about the pyramid's construction have persisted for centuries, even though mainstream archaeology has identified ramps, levers, and organized labor as the likely methods. Egypt's pyramids were not built by slaves, according to most modern archaeological evidence, a myth that persisted for centuries. Excavations of nearby worker villages in Egypt have revealed evidence of paid laborers organized in skilled work crews, who received food, medical care, and were even buried with honor near the pyramids they helped construct. Now here's something most people don't realize about Egypt's geography. Egypt is almost entirely desert. Roughly 95% of the country is uninhabitable sand and rock. The other 5%, the Nile River Valley and Delta, contains virtually Egypt's entire population of over 110 million people. This means Egypt has one of the most extreme population concentration patterns on Earth. Egypt's population density along the Nile is so intense that it's among the highest in the world for any major country, while Egypt's vast desert regions remain almost completely empty. The Nile River has determined where every single Egyptian has lived for roughly 7,000 years of continuous civilization. Egypt's ancient civilization rose specifically because the Nile flooded predictably every year, depositing rich soil that made agriculture possible in an otherwise impossible landscape. Without the Nile, Egypt as we know it simply would not exist. Egypt's modern political history is far more dramatic than most people realize, and it starts with foreign occupation. Egypt was effectively controlled by Britain starting in 1882. Even though it remained nominally part of the Ottoman Empire, Britain seized control largely to protect its financial interests in the Suez Canal, a waterway that Egypt itself had built just over a decade earlier. Egypt gained formal independence from Britain in 1922. But Britain maintained significant military and political influence for decades afterward, particularly around the Suez Canal zone. Egypt's full sovereignty wasn't truly realized until much later, and that lingering foreign control created deep resentment that shaped Egypt's politics for generations. Egypt's modern era changed dramatically in 1952, when a group of military officers led a revolution that overthrew the monarchy of King Farouk. Egypt's revolution was led initially by General Mohammed Naguib, but the real power behind it was a young officer named Gamal Abdel Nasser, who would become Egypt's most influential leader of the 20th century. Egypt's Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal in 1956, a move so significant it triggered an international military crisis. Britain, France, and Israel launched a joint invasion of Egypt in response. But pressure from the United States and the Soviet Union forced them to withdraw, a moment historians consider the symbolic end of Britain's status as a global superpower and a massive nationalist victory for Egypt. Egypt under Nasser became a leading voice in the non-aligned movement, positioning itself as a leader for newly independent nations across Africa and the Middle East during the Cold War. Egypt's influence during this period extended far beyond its own borders, shaping politics across the entire Arab world. Egypt's more recent history includes one of the most significant uprisings of the 21st century. In 2011, Egypt experienced massive protests as part of the broader Arab Spring movement, with millions of Egyptians filling Cairo's Tahrir Square demanding the resignation of President Hosni Mubarak, who had ruled Egypt for nearly 30 years. Egypt's 2011 revolution succeeded in removing Mubarak after just 18 days of sustained protest, an outcome that stunned the world, given how entrenched his government had seemed. Egypt then went through a turbulent few years involving a democratically elected president, a military takeover in 2013, and significant ongoing debate about Egypt's political direction that continues today. Egypt's current government under President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has focused heavily on infrastructure and economic development, including massive projects like a new administrative capital being built outside Cairo specifically to reduce overcrowding. Egypt is essentially building an entirely new city from scratch to house government offices and millions of residents, a project on a scale that echoes Egypt's ancient tradition of monumental construction. Now let's talk about Egypt's food, because almost nobody outside the Middle East has properly discovered it. Egypt's national dish is something called koshari, a combination of rice, lentils, macaroni, chickpeas, and a spiced tomato sauce, topped with crispy fried onions. Egypt's koshari sounds like an unusual combination, but it's considered comfort food across the entire country, sold everywhere from street carts to upscale restaurants. Egypt's full madams, slow-cooked fava beans seasoned with cumin, garlic, and lemon is one of the oldest documented dishes in human history, with evidence suggesting Egypt's ancient population was eating some version of it thousands of years ago. Egypt typically eats full madams for breakfast, often wrapped in flatbread with vegetables. Egypt's molokhia is a dish made from a leafy green vegetable cooked into a thick, garlicky stew, usually served over rice with chicken or rabbit. Egypt's molokhia has a unique, somewhat slimy texture that takes some newcomers by surprise, but it remains one of the most beloved traditional dishes across the entire country. Egypt produces tea culture so central to daily life that turning down an offered cup of tea can be seen as genuinely impolite. Egypt's traditional tea is often brewed extremely strong and sweetened heavily, a sharp contrast to how most Western countries prepare it, and Egypt's tea-drinking rituals happen constantly throughout the day in homes, offices, and cafes. Egypt has specific cultural and legal realities that surprise many visitors. Egypt is a majority Muslim country, with around 90% of the population identifying as Muslim and most of the remainder Coptic Christian, one of the oldest Christian communities in the world, dating back to the 1st century AD. Egypt's Coptic Christians have their own pope, their own distinct liturgical traditions, and a continuous presence in Egypt that predates the arrival of Islam by centuries. Egypt enforces certain public modesty expectations, particularly for women, though enforcement varies significantly between tourist areas and more conservative regions. Egypt does not have an outright legal dress requirement nationwide, but cultural expectations strongly encourage modest dress, especially outside major tourist destinations like Cairo, Luxor, and the Red Sea resorts. Egypt has strict laws regarding photography of certain government buildings, military installations, and bridges. Violations can lead to serious legal consequences. Egypt also restricts the export of genuine antiquities, a law taken extremely seriously given the country's history of artifacts being removed by foreign collectors and museums over the past 2 centuries. Egypt's tourism industry remains one of its most important economic sectors, employing millions of people directly and indirectly. Egypt has worked hard to rebuild tourist confidence following political instability in the 2010s, and the industry has shown significant recovery in recent years as Egypt continues opening new archaeological sites and museums. Egypt recently opened the Grand Egyptian Museum near the Pyramids of Giza, one of the largest archaeological museums in the world, built specifically to house the complete Tutankhamun collection together for the first time in history. Egypt spent over $1 billion on this museum, representing the country's massive ongoing investment in showcasing its ancient heritage to the modern world. Egypt's Valley of the Kings near Luxor contains the tombs of pharaohs including Tutankhamun, whose nearly intact tomb discovered in 1922 remains one of archaeology's most significant finds. Egypt's Tutankhamun died young, likely a teenager, and the wealth found in his relatively modest tomb gives historians a sense of just how extraordinary the tombs of more powerful pharaohs must have been before ancient tomb robbers emptied most of them centuries ago. Here's the truth that ties Egypt's whole story together. Egypt is a nation where 7,000 years of continuous civilization exists alongside a country still actively writing its modern political story through revolution, foreign occupation, independence, more revolution, and ongoing transformation. Egypt's ancient monuments and Egypt's modern struggles aren't separate stories. They're the same story, just separated by thousands of years. Egypt continues building monumental structures today, just like it did 5,000 years ago, except now it's building entire cities instead of pyramids. If this video changed how you see Egypt beyond just the pyramids, share it with someone who's never looked past the ancient history. Subscribe to Untold Facts because Egypt's modern story deserves just as much attention as its ancient one. And now you know both.